Hey y'all! Thought we'd pop in today to talk about the magic of handmade. Or maybe a better way to put it is why making things with your hands still matters so much, even in a world that keeps trying to rush us past it. There's something quietly rebellious about sitting down with yarn, thread, or fabric and choosing to make something slowly. We live in a world where just about anything can be bought, delivered, replaced, or upgraded in a matter of days, or sometimes even hours. Convenience is everywhere, speed is expected, and yet here we are, picking up needles, hooks, or hoops, and deciding to take the long way instead. And that choice, it's more powerful than it looks. When you're knitting a scarf or stitching a design or crocheting a blanket, you're doing something that doesn't really fit into that fast-paced system. You're choosing patience. You're choosing process. You're choosing to spend your time creating instead of consuming. And I think that's where the magic really begins. Because handmade isn't just about the end result. It's not just about the scarf being warm or the blanket being cozy or the finished cross-stitch hanging neatly on a wall. It's about everything that happens in between that first stitch and the last. It's about the rhythm. If you've been doing fiber crafts for any amount of time, you know exactly what I mean. There's a kind of rhythm that settles in when you're working. The soft click of knitting needles, the gentle pull and loop of a crochet hook, that steady motion of a needle passing through fabric and cross-stitch. It becomes almost meditative. Your hands know what to do, even when your mind is still catching up. You fall into that quiet flow where time softens just a little bit. You might be listening to music or watching a show or just sitting in the quiet. But whatever else is happening, your hands keep moving. And in that movement, something shifts. You're not just passing time, you're building something. And there's something incredibly grounding about that. In a world where so much of what we do is digital, temporary, or intangible, fibercrafts gives you something real, something you can hold, something you can see growing, stitch by delicate stitch. It didn't exist before you started, and now it does, because of you. That's a kind of creation we don't always give ourselves enough credit for. We tend to downplay it. We say things like, oh, it's just a scarf, or it's just a little project, or I'm still learning. But the truth is, every handmade piece carries intention. It carries time. It carries effort. And whether it's your first project or your 100th, that matters. There's also something deeply personal about handmade work that you just can't replicate with store-bought items. When you make something, you're making choices the entire way through. You're choosing the yarn and the color and the pattern and the texture, even the pace, even the mistakes are yours. And I want to pause on that for a second, because mistakes are a big part of this conversation. If you've ever dropped a stitch or miscounted a row, split your yarn, or gotten halfway through a pattern only to realize that something's a little off, you know just how frustrating that can be. It's tempting to think you've done something wrong or that the project is somehow ruined. But here's the thing. Those imperfections, they're a part of that story. Every uneven edge, every slightly crooked line, every little adjustment you made along the way, that's not failure. That's evidence that a real person made this, that hands were involved, that attention and care were present. Perfection doesn't tell a story. Handmade does. And honestly, if everything came out perfectly every time, I think we'd lose something important. We'd lose the learning, the growth, the little moments where we figure things out and adjust and keep going anyway. That's where a lot of the satisfaction comes from. Because finishing a project isn't just about having the object at the end. It's about knowing everything that went into it. The time you spent, the time you had to redo a section, the moments you almost gave up, but then didn't. That kind of completion hits differently. And then there's the emotional side of it, which I think we don't really talk about enough. Handmade pieces often carry memory in a really unique way. Maybe you worked on a project during a specific season of your life. Maybe you stitched a piece while watching a certain show or during quiet evenings after long days. Maybe you made something for someone else. A gift, a comfort item, something meaningful. All of that gets woven into the piece, whether you realize it or not. You can pick up something you made months or years ago and remember where you were when you made it, what you were feeling, what was going on around you. That's not something you get from something you bought off a shelf. There's also a kind of legacy in handmade work that I think is really beautiful. When you make something, especially something that lasts, like a blanket, a garment, or even a well-done cross-stitch, you're creating something that can be passed down, shared, or kept for years. And even if it never leaves your home, it still becomes a part of your space, your life, your story. It's a kind of quiet legacy, but it's there, and it matters. Now, I know it's really easy to compare our work to what we see online. Pinterest and Instagram, all of it. It's filled with perfectly styled, perfectly lit, perfectly executed projects. And it can make you feel like what you're making isn't good enough. But that's not the goal. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is connection. Connection to the craft. Connection to the process. Connection to yourself as a maker of that craft. Because when you sit down and create something with your hands, you're doing more than just following a pattern. You're participating in something that people have been doing for generations. Fiber crafts have a long, rich history. Knitting, crochet, embroidery, these aren't new hobbies. They've been passed down, shared, adapted, and reinvented over time. And when you pick up your tools, you become a part of that ongoing story. That's kind of incredible when you think about it. So if your stitches aren't perfect, that's okay. If your tension isn't consistent, that's okay too. If you've had to frog half your project and start again, yeah, that's frustrating, but it's also part of the process. Every stitch you make is practice. Every project you finish is progress. And every piece you create is uniquely yours. There's a lot of value in that, even if it doesn't always feel like it in the moment. Because at the end of the day, handmade isn't about impressing anyone else. It's not about hitting some invisible standard of perfection. It's about making something real with your own two hands. And that's where the magic lives. Not in flawless results, but in the act of creating, in the time you spend, in the care you put in the fact that something exists now that didn't exist before. That's not small. That's not just a hobby. That's creation. So the next time you sit down with your yarn or your fabric or your hoop, try to give yourself a little bit of grace. Let it be imperfect. Let it be slow. Let it be yours. Because those little details, the uneven stitches, the tiny adjustments, the choices you made along the way, they're what make your work meaningful. And that's something no machine, no factory, and no mass-produced item can ever truly replicate. Well, y'all, that's about it. Tell me what you're working on right now, or the last project that made you feel really proud. I'd love to hear about it. Happy stitching!